right. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Todd Davidson. I'm the CEO of Travel Oregon, and I have the privilege of serving as the chair of the board of directors of Brand USA. And I'm happy to welcome all of you to our July 2024 board of directors meeting. First of all, thank you, board members, for making the time either to be here in person or join us online. I know there are conflicts and challenges as always, and so in whatever way you're able to be here, your presence means the world to me, and I know to the staff team. So thank you for your devotion to the work that we're doing here to help grow America's economy through its travel and tourism industry. I also want to thank the staff team. A ton of work goes into preparing for these meetings, the pre-reads that are sent out in advance, whether it's financials, program updates, and the like. Very grateful for the work, very grateful to have it well in advance, so we have the time to really thoughtfully review it and consider questions and even pose questions in advance should we choose to. I also want to give a very special thank you to my dear friend, Mr. Chris Thompson. Chris, we're jokingly, as I guess we talked about yesterday, we kind of navigated that gangly, awkward teenage stage of this transition, but what you have meant to the travel and tourism industry for 40 years. I mean, in this industry, this final chapter, these 12 years here at the helm of Brand USA, the legacy that you're leaving, the foundation that you have left for this board and for your successor, Mr. Fred Dixon, sitting here with me, certainly means the world to us and cannot be understated at all or overstated at all. And I just congratulate you for that legacy, for that work, and especially now for knowing that you will be this fall inducted into the U.S. Travel Industry Travel Association's Hall of Leaders. So congratulations, my friend. It's very well deserved. As I alluded to, it's also Fred Dixon's first meeting as president and CEO. And I had said at the last board meeting, as I turned to Chris to provide us the CEO report, I said, I just had this epiphany that this is kind of this bittersweet moment, that this is going to be the last time that I will be doing this. And the next time I'll be doing it with the new CEO, not knowing who it might be at that exact moment in time. But incredibly pleased with the way the search went. Fred I'm excited. I know the board's excited. I hear it from them quite consistently. And especially our industry colleagues are very, very excited to have you here and have you at the helm. So welcome. Thank you to this president and CEO role. We have record attendance today, which I think is both a testament to the foundation that Chris has built and the excitement about having you in this role, Fred. I'm hearing there are literally hundreds of people that are joining us online, record attendance. And so again, welcome to all of you and thank you for your interest in the work of Brand USA. Before I turn this over to Fred to provide us with his first CEO report and update, we do have a little bit of business to take care of as a board, and that is approving the minutes of our March 22nd meeting. Those were distributed in advance, and I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes as provided.
So moved.
Thank you, Lauren. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Mike. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, hearing none, the minutes are approved as provided to us. And now it is my great pleasure to turn this portion of the meeting over to our new president and CEO, Mr. Fred.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, everyone, and good day to all my colleagues in the room and to everyone online. Thank you for this amazing turnout. I am so excited to be here today. It is something that is humbling to me. I thank you for the trust that the board has placed in me and the industry at large. And I cannot tell you how excited I am to have begun last week and to begin more in earnest with all of you today. I'm grateful for the support that has been shown to me by Todd and the board. Also the senior team of this organization who has really been kind and thoughtful in my onboarding, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. And the warm welcome from all of my new colleagues across the organization. I want to especially thank Chris for his generosity of time and knowledge and spirit. It has been a terrific onboarding with him, and he has shared deeply with me, and I feel first day ready because of you, Chris. So thank you for all of that. Some of you know a little bit about my background and my story. After more than 30 years in the industry, it is a profound moment for me and deeply honored to be stepping into these shoes, into this role. I began my career in tourism and I've spent, as I said, more than 30 years in this industry that I love. I think I've been fortunate to work in just about every sector of the travel industry. My family's got a small motel in Gatlinburg, Tennessee in the Smoky Mountains, where I worked as a pool boy and cleaning rooms and was a desk clerk during college, worked for Delta Airlines, major attraction in the South Biltmore State, you may know, in North Carolina, tourism boards of every size, from Gatlinburg to Nashville. And then it was a dream for me to get to go and work in our nation's largest city, in New York City, where I was for more than 20 years and was the CEO the last 10 years. And I thank all my colleagues along that entire journey that have helped prepare me for today. It's immense responsibility, obviously, in leading this organization in the nation, but I feel incredibly prepared because of the foundation that I'm inheriting and the brilliance of the team that's here and this remarkable leadership of this board. So I thank you all for what you have done to get us to this place. I've already begun with industry listening sessions just this past week, my first week at Destinations International Annual Convention. We have been on the road these first 2 weeks. My first priority, of course, is listening to the industry, learning from the industry and my colleagues, and engaging broadly. Next week will be my first formal week in office. And soon after that, many of us will be together again on the road at U.S. Travel Association's ESTO in Columbus, Ohio. The listening sessions last week at DI, 2 of them were held with CEOs and CMOs of destinations from across the country. Was really impactful. And I thank all of my colleagues across the industry for sharing openly and passionately. I very much look forward to continuing engagement with a diverse universe of stakeholders and partners across the coming weeks and months. And to everyone, I thank you in advance for your engagement and your support. The main order of business today is to present the fiscal year 2025 plan for the board's approval. And I want to thank the team for the thoughtful preparation. Members of the board received the plan in draft form 2 weeks ago for initial review. This plan is the first step along a 3-year timeline toward achieving the National Travel and Tourism Strategy goals of welcoming 90 million international visitors by 2027, who will be contributing $279 billion and more in spending each year to the U.S. economy. To set the stage, we will start with an overarching look at the 3-year pathway to meeting these goals, before turning specifically to the FY25 objectives, marketing plan, and summary budget. Now, after the board votes on the FY25 business plan today, we will have a discussion about committee roles and participation. And finally, the staff will provide a review of current year activities, including progress against FY24 KPIs, as well as highlights and program successes since this board last met in March. Thank you again to everyone for the warm welcome and support. And thank you to U.S. Travel for what has been a great summit here this summer. It's been terrific to align with them here in California. I'm incredibly excited by what's ahead and look forward to working closely with this board and the industry broadly to advance our goals. Now, with that, I am very happy to turn things over to our Chief Marketing Officer, Stacey Melman, and Senior Director of Insights and Analytics, Rosina Barber-Stefano, for a look at the pathway to 2027. Thank you.
Good morning or afternoon to everybody who is joining us today. Thank you for spending a couple of hours with us learning about our plan for the next few years. As Fred said, the National Travel and Tourism Strategy was released in 2022, and it puts forth a 5-year goal to boost American employment and attracting 90 million international visitors, spending $279 billion every year by 2027. The plan recognizes the crucial role that Brand USA plays in achieving that visitation and spending goals, and serves for us as a North Star to move the U.S. travel industry beyond that pandemic recovery towards sustainable, long-term international visitor economy. We have developed a 3-year framework that plots the best path to achieve that goal. And this multi-year framework guides our long-term initiatives, our global marketing investment, in our infrastructure. It also allows for improved longer-term planning, audience development, and messaging, which is really important because marketing international travel is an ongoing and cumulative effort. Because the 3-year framework sets up the strategy for our fiscal year 25 plans, Rosina, who is our Senior Director of Research, Analytics, and Insights, will spend some time walking through the thinking behind that, and then we're gonna shift to our plans for 2025. For both of those sections, we're gonna start with some high-level data, and then we'll shift to our strategy. So for that, I'm gonna pass it to Rosina to kind of set the stage.
Thank you, Stacy. Good morning, everyone. Let's start by looking at the big picture. As Stacy said, our 3-year strategy starts with an examination of those macroeconomic landscape and global visitation patterns. By understanding these trends, we can identify key market opportunities. As we focus on the NTTS goal of 90 million visitors by 2027, the projections are exciting. According to the latest forecast, not only are we on track to meeting this goal, but we might achieve it a year earlier. We've witnessed remarkable growth in the past few years. Last year alone, we saw a 30% increase in visitors, and this year we're anticipating just under 20% growth. While growth rates are expected to slow as we approach pre-pandemic levels, we will still see positive trends, although at a much more moderate single-digit pace starting in 2026. As we take a look at this graph here, you might notice that colors might be a little bit tricky, so I'm just going to walk you through it. At the bottom, we have Canada and Mexico, followed by our top 10 overseas market as a chunk of the graph, and then the rest of the world. Canada and Mexico make up 50% of total arrivals. Interestingly, Mexico is increasing much faster than Canada, yet Canada remains our largest market in terms of visitation volume, increasing by about 1 million visitors each year. Our top 10 overseas markets are growing rapidly as well, which is why we are seeing that the forecast is reaching that goal ahead of schedule. To sum the previous graph and our visitation goal, the top 12 markets comprising Canada, Mexico, and the top 10 account for 80% of total US visitation. These markets alone are expected to add that 23 million visitors that we need to reach the goal by 2027. Meanwhile, the rest of the world will continue contribute nearly 5 million visitors. Despite the sheer volume of these 12 top markets, it's crucial to remember that every market is important to us. Now, let's shift our focus to the spending goal. In this case, we examined the spending numbers released by NTTO and set our own forecasts based on growth trends from Oxford Economics. Same as the visitation graph, the dark blue at the bottom represents Canada, followed by Mexico, and then the top 10 markets, and then the rest of the world. Unlike visitation, where Canada and Mexico dominate, these two markets account for nearly 20% of the spending. These underscores the significant contribution of the top 10 overseas market, which comprise 30% of visitation, but generate 50% of the visitor spending. Our estimate indicates that we're on track to reach the NTTS spending goal 2 years ahead of schedule, surpassing the 278 billion target next year. To summarize, just as we did with the visitation, we need an annual growth rate of at least 7% every year. Based on current forecasts, the top 12 markets are performing exceptionally well, and they're actually are expected to grow at a 17% growth. And the rest of the markets are growing same, strongly, but a slightly lower rate. The strong performance, this is why we expect to achieve our goals ahead of time. With that, I'll pass it back to Stacy to discuss how we can assess this market in more detail.
Okay, so with a view of the projections over the next few years and using the NTTS goals as the North Star, also understanding that even though we are likely, forecasts say that we're likely to meet those projections, those aren't set in stone. So we have to develop a plan and a framework to get us there. So we've developed a market prioritization model to help us plan our resource investment. Building the model was a 3-step process where we put the markets first into category tiers based on a variety of variables like macroeconomic factors, like GDP growth projections in developing economies compared to those in emerging markets, where developed economies are expected to grow more modestly compared to those in emerging markets. We also looked at how the strength of the US dollar and travel price inflation will affect international traveler and visitor spending differently across markets. We looked at market dynamics, like the size of the market, the population and the traveler growth projections, and how easy or accessible it is to get here. What is the value of the visitor? What is the average spending and purchasing power likely to increase, or is it likely to decrease or remain flat? And what are the economic risks of the market? Is there potential for growth, likely volatility, or perhaps projected downturns? And also, we looked at whether Brand USA has had a market representation, or if there's been any previous or ongoing marketing investment. It's worth noting that we will continue to monitor these factors on a semi-regular basis and review this prioritization model on an annual basis over the next 3 years, given evolving circumstances. So we looked at the model from 3 different vantage points. All right, let's see. Oh, helps if I press the right button. There we go. The first is whether there's been any previous activity in the market, or what we call Brand USA legacy, which indicates the level of historical investment that Brand USA has had in a specific market. The term categories means a grouping of markets that have been methodically ranked and categorized based on a series of macroeconomic indicators, like I just talked about, looking at future market projections and historical visitation and spend performance. So when we think about categories, it's basically an independent assessment of the market opportunity. And the objectives are define the strategic and specific outcomes that Brand USA wants to achieve within a identified market. So this will all make more sense in a moment, but the objectives allow us to optimize both the market performance and our strategic goals, and provide a very focused perspective for our cross-functional team. So these next 4 slides are the meatiest part of the model. Markets have been grouped into 5 categories: core, growth, intermediate, emerging, and remaining. Core markets are cornerstone markets characterized by substantial visitation volume and robust spending. They typically have a very strong Brand USA legacy with historical marketing investments and consistent in-market representation. These markets, these core markets, represent a resilience to macroeconomic fluctuations and provide a very stable foundation for revenue generation and market expansion. Growth markets exhibit promising visitation volume and show potential for significant spending growth in the near term. While these markets are typically not as established in visitation and spend as the core markets, they possess a very notable Brand USA legacy or have received recent strategic investments from us. These markets offer opportunities for expansion and diversification, but require strategic focus in order to capitalize on that growth trajectory. Intermediate markets in the middle are in sort of a state of flux. They have moderate visitation, volume, and unstable spending trends. There has been sporadic Brand USA legacy there, and while these markets exhibit potential, they're also facing likely shifts in market dynamics and require careful monitoring and agility to navigate those changing macroeconomic conditions and the increasing competitiveness of the market. Emerging markets are characterized by nascent visitation volume and spending potential. We view these markets as opportunities for possible future growth. They have limited to no Brand USA legacy, but they offer strategic advantages like untapped traveler segments or innovative market niches. We view emerging markets as somewhat risky, but they also present opportunities for experimentation and could provide an early mover advantage for us. Activity in emerging markets requires adaptive strategies in order for us to capitalize on their evolving potential. Finally, remaining markets encompass the rest of the world. They have limited visitation volume and stagnant or declining spending trends, obviously making them less attractive for our immediate investment. We have historically not been active in these markets, and many of these markets are facing challenges or adverse macroeconomic conditions. Let's look now at the market objectives, which is what we believe to be the strategic opportunities to drive visitation and spending to the USA. For the large core markets with modest growth rates in 2025, we want to maintain and support the current levels of visitation, visitor spending, and brand equity. These high volume markets like Canada, India, the UK, Germany, and France require ongoing marketing efforts to ensure that we get repeat visits and sustain a positive destination image. The objective for core and growth markets that demonstrate accelerated growth in 2025 is to expand. The goal is to increase visitation and visitor spending and enhance brand equity by attracting new visitor segments and broadening the appeal of the United States. Key markets for this expand objective include Mexico, Brazil, China, Japan, and Australia. The diversify objective applies to growth in emerging markets that have significant potential. Diversify means opening new tourism audiences or reducing our dependency on an existing traveler base. Markets like South Korea, Argentina, Costa Rica, and the Philippines show the greatest potential for diversification over the next 3 years. Any diversification efforts will involve building new traveler segments and increasing awareness of the USA destinations and experiences within those audiences. Stabilize means to maintain a consistent presence and engagement in a market without a significant investment in order to retain a baseline level of visitation and spending. Typically, the stabilize objective is aligned to intermediate markets because we want to preserve the moderate visitation and spending levels with minimal expense. So this applies to markets like Colombia, Spain, and smaller regional European markets like Benelux, Switzerland, Austria, and the Nordic countries, where we'll be monitoring closely and adapting our strategic market approach. The final objective, monitor, is an indicator that we will monitor visitation trends and forecasts for the remaining markets, which show limited growth potential and are currently not the best markets for resource allocation. But of course, things change and we don't want to write any market off. So we're going to continue to track those macroeconomic and political dynamics and develop strategies for markets that may shift into an emerging market category. So after looking at the categories and the objectives, we group the markets based on their performance, identifying our objectives, and we align the markets to form overarching strategies for each group. So I'm not going to go through everything on this slide, but for the core markets, their objective is to maintain or expand. For the growth markets, their objectives would be to expand or diversify. For the intermediate markets, objectives would be to monitor or stabilize. For the emerging markets, objectives would be to diversify or expand. And as I said just a moment ago, the remaining markets would be to monitor. So this is a look at the market prioritizations at the country level over a 3-year period, demonstrating the markets where we should be prioritizing our resources. We have modeled this out for 2025, 2026, and 2027, but we anticipate that dynamics will change and we will reassess the spread in about 6 months as we begin to plan for 2026. So in a moment, we're going to shift to the fiscal year 25 plan, where we will show you what the objectives are for each of our market and our market specific strategies. But before I pass to Erin to kick us off for that, I just wanted to ask whether or not there was any questions around the 3-year framework or anything that I shared thus far. I know it's a lot. There's a lot of robust Excel spreadsheets went into developing this model.
Not so much a question, Stacy, just a comment, but just looking at this slide in particular, especially the core and the growth. If anything tells us about the changes currently in the world because of COVID and the environment that we're now building back from, it's that slide, because I see markets listed under growth over core markets prior to COVID and the inverse in some others. I'll use India as an example. 10 years ago, Brand USA would have called them an emerging market. The only way Oregon was able to get into India is because Brand USA was starting to do programs there and making it affordable for us. As you said, there's always risk in an emerging market. You made that risk more palatable. And so we were able to enter that market, and suddenly, prior to COVID, India had become like a top 12 market for us in Oregon. And that wasn't by accident, it was because of the good work that was being done by Brand USA. So I just wanted to acknowledge your work and the team's work in clearly calling out the impacts that, and the environment that we're living in now. And it shows up here really strongly.
Thank you, yes. Okay, Aaron.
Okay, thank you, Stacy, and good morning and good afternoon, folks on the call, to the board. Thanks for joining us today. So appreciate Stacy, Rosina taking us through that 3-year view toward the 2027 North Star of the National Travel and Tourism Strategy goals. We're now going to move into the part of the meeting where we'll present the fiscal 25 business plan for the board's consideration. We'll start that with our fiscal 25 objectives, and just to reiterate what Fred said at the top of the meeting, and as a reminder to folks, this is always the time of year where we bring forward our business plan. We're on the federal fiscal, and once the board hopefully votes to adopt the plan, ultimately we'll finalize that draft and send it off where the Secretary of Commerce will receive it by August 1st. And she will ultimately approve those objectives in consultation with her interagency partners at state and DHS. And of course, the marketing plan itself and the summary budget will really help inform that approval process. So we're going to go through a few folks through the fiscal 25 business plan now. As I said, we're going to start with the overall business objectives. We will then talk a little bit, Rosina will once again share a little bit more about the specific fiscal 25 outlook from a data perspective. Stacy will talk about some of the strategies and tactics that we'll bring forward from a marketing perspective to achieve those goals. And then ultimately, Don will talk through the summary budget to finance all of those activities. So having outlined that, I'm now going to dive into the objectives. And to set the stage for that, I'll just remind folks that as we were coming out of the pandemic, the senior team engaged in a deep consideration process around the composition of our mission and vision as an organization. And we did come forward with a somewhat updated strategic platform, which you can see on the slide here. And I'll just go through that briefly, which of course is in the business plan, and it forms the foundation of all that we do. So ultimately, this involved broadening and putting it into a little bit more plain English, the reason that we exist and the mission that we pursue. So our vision is to enrich lives by welcoming the world to travel to the USA, which leads us to our mission to create community prosperity through partnership, leadership, and travel inspiration in order to deliver for the U.S. travel industry and the communities of the USA. And you can see here the values that we uphold as we do these things: accountability, collaboration, courage, inclusivity, and partnership. And I wanted to set the scene for the objectives with this strategic foundation because starting in the current fiscal year, FY24, we developed a set of 4 broad organizational objectives that we believe are more or less evergreen year in and year out. They flow directly from this updated mission and vision statement. The board, of course, has received this document a couple weeks ago. The general public will see it on our website once it's approved by the Secretary of Commerce. And you'll see 4 broad organizational objectives that are overarching, that are consistent year to year, that we once again will maintain in fiscal 25. And as I said, they flow directly from this. Each year, we'll have goals, strategies, and ultimately targets underneath each organizational objective. And those, the farther down the funnel, the more specific you get, the more there will be variation year to year. But we believe these 4 overarching objectives frame what we do from that mission and vision. So the first organizational objective is to establish and maintain the USA as the preferred global travel destination. And as I said here, there's goals, strategies, and ultimately targets that we'll be accountable for in fiscal year 25. So just to go through these here, the 2 main high-level goals under this objective are to create innovative global marketing, to inspire and sustain visitation, and to enhance global brand awareness and perception. In the strategies, as you can see on the slide, develop and optimize marketing campaigns tailored to each stage of the traveler journey, which Stacy will explore in just a minute, to drive intent to visit, enhance desirability of the USA as a destination. We also will elevate global brand awareness and perception through captivating storytelling and visually appealing content that showcase the diverse experiences and communities on offer in the USA, and to leverage strategic partnerships with iconic brands to enhance destination appeal. In the specific metrics that we're proposing to hold ourselves accountable in fiscal 25, as you can see here, to increase intent to visit the USA by 2 percentage points. And this really seeks to measure the likelihood of traveling within the next 2 years. And we set 2 percentage points because that is, first of all, higher than the long run average of what you might expect to see in a fiscal year. It would put us basically in the mid 60s in terms of our response, our consumer survey response toward intent to travel in the next 2 years. And then again, that would be above our historic average and above pre-pandemic average sentiment. Brand awareness of the USA as a travel destination of 90+%. This really measures, again, among our consumer insights, a specific question among that set of folks that might not be planning to travel to the USA in the next 12 months. And it's really the percentage of folks who are not aware of the specific types of experiences in the USA. So we want that to be a very, very low percentage of folks, and we're proposing that a 90+% target, again, measured by our own proprietary survey methodology in terms of people being familiar with the destinations and experiences in the United States. And then finally, positive perception of the USA as a travel destination really is measuring both, as it says, positive perception of the USA, but also the idea that that there's good value there, that the USA is worthy of somebody selecting it first among our competitive set for their next long haul destination. So again, there we're proposing a 65% plus target for fiscal year 25. The second organizational objective is to contribute to community prosperity by driving international visits and spending. And this is where we really get into some of the macroeconomic outcomes of our activities. And the overall goal here is to build a foundation for the long-term sustained growth of the U.S. visitor economy. And will drive visitation growth and enhance visitor spending from prioritized international markets, expand our market presence in targeted growth markets, and drive traveler dispersal throughout the United States. And what we're proposing here is, as you can see on the slide, a 2-year window. Of course, we don't yet have a baseline for fiscal 24. We won't have that for another 8 to 10 months or so. And so we're looking at a percentage growth over the benchmark that we do have for fiscal year 23. And in terms of attributable incremental increase in visitation, which of course we report every year in our annual report and in our ROI study, we're looking at a plus 30% increase in fiscal 25 over 23 in terms of attributable incremental visitation. That target's even higher for the spending, plus 45% fiscal 25 over fiscal 23. And so we're proposing that those be the accountability metrics for visitation and spend that's attributable to Brand USA in fiscal 25. In terms of the other two targets you see on here, US long haul market share. Long haul, of course, measures people that are coming here largely by air from farther away places. Other than Canada and Mexico, most people are coming on airplanes. And I believe the technical definition is 3,000 miles or more travel. The USA does have a commanding share of the global long haul market. And we'd like to keep that above 13%, which would keep us double the number 2 country of the UK. And then finally, traveler dispersal. Of course, our job in the Travel Promotion Act is to get people to, through, and beyond the gateways. And we're proposing to use an index that's developed by Tourism Economics that measures the percentage of folks who go beyond, even beyond the top 5 gateway states in the United States. And so it's not really at the expense of those gateway states, but it's getting people in addition to where the planes lead them to go to more places. And what we're looking to see is an increase of 10% year over year in the percentage of travelers who also go beyond those 5 gateways. That would include the other 45 states, the 5 territories, and the District of Columbia. So that's an external index that we'll use to measure that, but something that we think is scientific and numerical that allows us to see the effect that we're having on traveler dispersal. And I guess I should say I'm going to go through the 4 of these and then there'll be an opportunity for some discussion, but feel free to chime in board as you see fit. The third organizational objective, to lead and engage stakeholders of the U.S. travel industry. And this is really about how we engage with our industry and provide some of those platforms and value that Todd was just alluding to. So the overarching goal to create impactful programs and initiatives that provide value to stakeholders in the industry, supporting their efforts to promote international travel to the USA. And the strategies in 25 are to develop and maintain robust partnerships with stakeholders across the industry, ensuring high levels of partner satisfaction and engagement, and to achieve mutual success in promoting international travel to the USA. We want to engage and promote a diverse base of US stakeholders and create opportunities throughout the industry for underrepresented groups. And the specific methodologies that we'll use for fiscal 25 we do our own proprietary partner survey every year, and we'd like to see partner satisfaction in excess of 90%. And then obviously we'll see partner program retention rate based on partners continuing to come back year after year, and we'd like to see that above 90% as well. And then finally, we're proposing to develop a index so that we can have some benchmarking to grow from in the years ahead about US stakeholder diversity. And what we're hoping to do here is actually track and measure the frequency of or instances of times that we are promoting minority-owned businesses, small businesses, women-owned businesses. And of course, we already track rural businesses per the law in our annual report. And so we will be putting together a sort of benchmark for that, our own index starting in 25 that will allow us to have real measurement, accountability, and something to build on in the years ahead as we seek to ensure that we put forward the best face of the world that represents all of the diverse experiences in the United States of America.
Aaron, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
On your, just for informational purposes, on your number of stakeholders, what percentage of those are DMOs?
Great question. That would defer ultimately to my colleague Cassidy on the specific number, but it's, as you can imagine, as the national DMO, we're a natural extension of our DMO partners at the state and local level. And so there's a real natural nexus there that we help extend their DMO reach to the international stage. So it's quite a high percentage, I believe, but I'll defer to Cassidy Bailey on the specific number there.
Yeah, I don't have the specific number, but you're indeed correct that I would say it's around 75%. We had about 273 actively engaged partners participating with us on our opportunities in FY23.
Thank you.
I think, it can vary a little bit year in, year out, but probably 3 to 1 is usually about what it has been historically.
I would just add that it also depends on the program. So we tend to see a lot of more private businesses attend our missions. And more DMOs are partnering with us on marketing programs.
Thank you.
And that's a good point that I'll just add to the last metric here about developing this diversity index. The purpose here is to be all encompassing. So it includes obviously our media programs, but also our trade programs, whether they are in market or whether it's when we're bringing folks here to develop product about the USA. So getting a holistic index is really the goal. And it's going to take a whole organization approach, but will give us something to build on in years ahead. And then finally, the fourth overarching evergreen organizational objective is to maintain excellent organizational integrity and reputation, setting the standard for the global travel industry. And the fiscal 25 goal is to foster a team that is forward-thinking, innovative, and collaborative to drive impactful industry leadership. We will ensure financial integrity and compliance, promote DE&I initiatives into our organizational practices and partnerships, and enhance Brand USA's positive industry perception. And the specific targets that we're looking at for fiscal 25 are, first of all, an overall Brand USA return on investment of 24%, plus 24% in fiscal 25 over 23. So that's an all-in ROI number that includes both the direct marketing and programmatic spend, as well as total organizational spend. We will target, once again, 100% compliance. We do not pay anything if it's not in compliance. And once again, a clean audit with no notes would be our target again for 25. We hope once again to secure private funding in order to maximize the available $100 million federal match, as we have done every year that fund has been fully capitalized. We anticipate doing that again next year. And then finally, to implement year 2 tactics under our organization-wide DE&I strategic plan that our CFO Don leads. It's a multi-pronged set of strategies, but basically lead to a series of tactics that we'll be implementing in fiscal year 25. So in summary, we're proposing to maintain the same overarching organizational objectives that we have in prior years. The board has had this in hand for a couple of weeks, and there's a draft version here in the room that I think there's a 2-page spread right after the market overviews that you can take a look at. And as I said, the specific targets and metrics that we propose are the ones that we're putting on the table. So I would entertain any questions or discussion that anybody has. But just the next step in today's presentation will be to continue through the draft business plan, to look at the market outlook, ultimately to our marketing strategies and tactics against the consumer journey, and finally to our summary budget, all of which is to support these objectives that we're putting forward today. With that, I'll see if anybody has any comment.
Aaron, if I may, under the first objective, looking at the strategies and the targets.
Yep.
Just looking for some added clarity. You mentioned one of the targets being brand awareness of the USA as a travel destination, 90% and above.
Yep.
I guess my question would be where? We've talked about where a couple of different ways. We've talked about Canada, Mexico, top 10, rest of the world,
Mhm.
when in Rosita's presentation. And then from a marketing standpoint, we also talked about, categories like core and emerging and intermediate.
Mhm.
So is this awareness global? Anywhere in the world, we want an average of at least 90% and above, or are we looking at 90% and above in core markets, emerging markets, et cetera? I'm just looking for kind of a where, and I also have the same question for the next bullet down below.
Great. So I'll take a first stab and then I'll defer to
Okay.
the technical experts on this matter. So just to reiterate what each of those 2 points is, and Rosina will correct me if I'm wrong on this. Basically, brand awareness of the USA as a travel destination is trying to get at people who are not saying that they would not come here because they're not aware of the specific things that there are to see and do. So it's kind of getting a little bit below just the pure brand level and into the specific types of experiences in the USA. And the 90+%, I'll again defer to Rosina, but I believe would be a global aggregate average. Rosina, I'll ask if if I butchered that or if you have something.
So, Todd, as we look at how we can assess ourselves in terms of success, the way we are setting the brand awareness is not necessarily for them to be familiar with the United States as a destination itself. It's like that personal familiarity of like, I am okay with traveling to the United States. I know where to head. So it's kind of like an inverted metric that we're looking at, and it's overall, using our proprietary research, and it encompasses us right now 15 markets that we assess. And technically, they cover those 4 markets that we've been targeting.
But now in this sense, the core growth and intermediate are most of them.
Right now, from a marketing standpoint, we're not making that distinction for the objectives. It's like overall.
Understood.
And then when it comes to the perception, it's that impression and worthiness of the United States as a destination.
I don't have a question on the second objective. So,
Yeah.
so I love the boldness of the numbers, right? So increase in visitation by 30%.
Yep.
And the spending outpaces visitation by 45, which means that we are expecting people to spend more.
Yep.
When they're here.
Mhm.
In a world where we are facing headwinds when it comes to foreign exchange and the strength of the dollar. What's our thinking about how do we go about attaining that?
Well, I'll start and again, I'll ask my colleagues to chime in. I think one of probably the main reason you see the target a little bit more ambitious for the spending than for the overall visitation is the composition of what that visitation will be. So you'll see higher incremental gains and higher spend, higher yield markets. Take India, for example, where in part based on the high marginal gains you can make from a lower visitation baseline, and in part just due to the nature of spending from that market, you see much higher kind of ROI in terms of our marketing spend there. I think it goes back to Rosina's 3-year view where you see the different composition of the roadmap to the visitation versus the roadmap to the spending. Canada and Mexico make up 50% or more of overall arrivals, but their average spend is quite low. And the ability to move the needle as a percentage of the baseline is obviously lower as well. And so we're anticipating spending money in markets where you don't have higher yield from, whether that be in India or even whether that be a traditional European market. You know, the average spend is 3x usually what a Canadian visitor would spend, for example. So that's why you would see the returns on the spending a little bit higher than under participation. But Stacy, correct me if I'm.
I would just also add that, the metric specifically is focused on what's attributable to us. And so as we look at targeting higher value visitors, we expect that number will be a little bit higher than maybe like the on average visitors.
So Stacy, when you say it's what's attributable to you,
Yes,
and I know we're getting in the weeds here, and I'm sorry.
that's okay. This is
When
what it's-
you're surveying for ROI specifically, are you asking them, you recall seeing a brand USA specific ad or messaging or anything like that? And I don't know process with focus groups or phone or what. So I'm assuming if you're asking them that, you're showing them some of these images, say it's just a clear view, or I'm not a research person, so you're like, yeah, you're an idiot, you're asking stupid questions.
No,
And I'm proudly saying I'm not a research person, but.
no, the way we do it, we commission it to Tourism Economics. We have a two-way process. We went back to old-fashioned kind of way, and we are doing ad effectiveness. So every quarter, we are assessing where we are. So we do get that lift in terms of surveys. It's like, have you seen this ad? How likely are you to come? We measure those. But as part of this process, it is part of an econometric model, where they do an assessment of the incremental visitation, and then they look at the spending from those markets, and they do assess that spending from them. And
Go ahead.
in addition, we do geolocation tracking to balance the model itself. So
My point being, I think would be difficult in some cases, and I pick the UK, for example, when so many US markets are there on their own, in addition to what we're going to say, to just be able to fine tune it that much. And it's a challenge, and that's why I just asked the question.
You are defining inherently the challenge of destination marketing organizations, right? Also, what is part of the ROI model is, like what Rosina said in terms of visitor lift. So we measure people who have been exposed to our advertising, not because they say that they have been, but because we are running ads in market where we know like a certain percentage of people characterized by a certain behavior has been targeted with an ad and then a control group. And so we're measuring the difference in then who comes to the United
So
States. And that
you
is-
know they've been served on their phone or
No.
something digitally.
Yes.
Through GPS, know that they.
Yes.
And
I want to pause for just a second and afford an opportunity to our folks that are joining us virtually, board members that are online. I know sometimes it may feel difficult to interject yourself when we're discussing things in a room, so I did want to pause. I didn't see any of the hand raise icons, but if any of you had questions that you wanted to raise at this point also. Not seeing any, okay. The only other comment I've got for you, Aaron, to consider is I heard you say it, but it wasn't in there, and I think it's important. On that fourth bullet, under the first objective, under the targets, you mentioned,
Make sure to go
of
back.
course, this is positive perception.
Yep.
But it doesn't say that.
Ah,
It just says
yes.
perception of,
Yes.
and it's like, well, that could be, do you know we're here?
Yes.
Whether you feel good or bad about it. So I think you mean positive. I think it's implicit, but I think we ought to just say it.
Good point.
Okay.
Do you have a view?
Got an opinion, so. Need an opinion for you.
Okay, so I'm going to, having gone through the top line organizational objectives, I'm now going to turn it back to Rosina to take a look at the fiscal 25 specific landscape and forecasts.
thank you, Erin. As part of the process, as part of the 3-year plan, as part of the fiscal year 25 plan, we go through the process and we conduct a situational analysis, looking at, as Stacy mentioned earlier, macroeconomic trends and industry landscape. It is important to understand these trends, especially how complex international travel can be. Factors, as Stacy mentioned, GDP growth, inflation, unemployment, and consumer spending all influence how willing and able people are to travel and spend money abroad. So as part of this, just as an example, we start with global economic outlook. According to the IMF outlook from April of this year, the global GDP is projected to grow. There's a steady rate of 3.2 from 24 to 26, matching the growth rate that we saw last year. This will dip slightly to 3.1 by 2027. The emerging markets and the developing countries are expected to lead this growth with a rate of 4.2, while the advanced economies will see more modest increase between 1.7 to 1.8%. As I've mentioned it before, the travel and tourism landscape is set to robust growth over the next few years, with global inbound arrivals expected to surpass pre-pandemic levels by this year and continue to rise through 2027. Consumers will continue to prioritize travel, contributing to a positive outlook from across regions. This recovery rate is faster than the US, which is expected to reach 28% pre-pandemic levels this year and surpass 2019 levels next year. As I discussed in previous slides, the United States is one of the largest inbound travel markets in the #1 long-haul destination. It's experiencing significant recovery and growth, so we're very happy to see that. Across all regions, total inbound visitation to the United States is projected to reach 7.81 million visitors this year, reflecting a notable increase over 2023. We could say that this growth indicates a visitation to the USA aligns with the global inbound, as we saw on the previous slide. This graph, a bit messy, but we wanted to make a point, as we mentioned during the 3-year plan. North America makes up to the half of the US inbound. Europe leads the overseas market in terms of volume. Europe, Asia, South America, and the Caribbean are expected to surpass pre-pandemic levels by next year. Central America and Oceania are recovering. Africa is anticipated to exceed pre-pandemic levels this year, with notable growth in key markets like South Africa and Nigeria. Well, we're on the right track and we see positive forecasts. We have to remain aware that there are several challenges. Global inflation has decreased but remains an issue. Just as you mentioned, Harry, the combination with the strength of the US dollar makes the US an expensive destination. Geopolitical uncertainties, we are very aware of the conflicts, affect travel routes and costs. There's also an increase in competition from other destinations, not necessarily like the traditional competitors, but also emerging traditional. And in addition to that, long visa wait times and changing perceptions of the United States can deter potential visitors. And building on the challenges, as I mentioned, the following graph shows the results of our own research. This highlights the main deterrents for traveling to the United States based on the tracking of 14 of our top markets. The #1 reason is wanting to visit other destinations, showing increased competition, followed by the perception of the United States being expensive. Concerns about planning and cost run high on this list. This insights as the situational analysis, it's to understand the barriers that we're addressing in the marketing strategies that Stacy will go over. So with that, I'll pass it to Stacy.
Okay, so we work very closely with tourism economics to identify and assess market opportunities. A lot of the data that we utilized for the 3-year framework related to market categories comes from tourism economics. The process is basically looks like this. It begins with a pre-qualification model that evaluates top line data from 90 different countries that help us narrow down the list of markets. Then tourism economics provides us with an analysis of a smaller set of markets, around 50 of them, based on 8 key criterion, which help us evaluate the allocation for each market. And we take that information and we pair it with our own market intelligence or consumer research studies and our information from our on-the-ground operations or experiences that we have marketing in a particular country. This is a look at the 8 key criterion that go into the market allocation model. It looks at 32 different indicators and aggregates a total market score. So basically, looks at size of the market, potential for economic growth, ease of access, visitor yield potential, opportunities to increase travel from a particular market, possible risks in terms of economic and political, traveler sentiment about traveling to the United States, and then the cost to market in a country. Our marketing activities are aligned to each phase of the pre-travel consumer journey: inspiration, consideration, planning, and booking. Each phase of the traveler journey calls for a particular set of messages and distribution channels and timing. Our brand plays a very different role at each phase of the traveler journey. So for example, during the inspiration phase, our role is to motivate and excite travelers by showcasing the variety of distinctive experiences that only they can have in the United States. During the consideration phase, our role is to educate travelers and showcase destinations and experiences to help them start personalizing a USA trip based on their individual interests and passions. In the planning phase, our role is to help them simplify the planning process so travelers can make the most of their visit and decrease a sense of feeling overwhelmed by the abundance of options that we have here. And in that booking stage, our role is to create a sense of urgency and reduce any second guessing that could be a barrier to conversion. This is a different view of our strategic marketing framework with our core marketing activities aligned to each phase of the consumer journey. So key activities in that inspiration phase are our brand marketing and advertising campaigns, social media, and especially the partnerships that we build with content creators who showcase their own USA experiences to their followers. In the consideration phase, we have a huge opportunity to influence traveler decision-making through our content marketing efforts like editorial content on our website, episodic content on Go USA TV, our cooperative marketing campaigns with our partners, and our global earned media. For the planning and booking phases, key activities include engagement with the travel trade who serve as advisors to their clients to plan a trip, the cooperative marketing programs that we do with tour operators, our online travel agency campaigns, product development activities like our fam trips, our missions, our B2B events, Tourism Exchange USA, and our themed road trip itineraries on Road Trips USA. This is a broad level view. Obviously, when you dig into each one of those boxes, there is a series of core activities within each different market or market region. This is a look at the different countries where we plan to have varying levels of marketing activities from that framework. We're developing a unique set of marketing tactics for each of these 17 market regions to achieve specific objectives. These markets provide the greatest opportunity to deliver visitors and spend and provide us the best path towards achieving the NTTS 2027 goals. This list of markets is very similar to what we have currently this year. Looks, we will be evolving our in-market presence. And I just want to connect this back to our 3-year framework. So this is the categorization of each one of those markets and the specific objective for each. So we have budgets and plans outlined for each of these markets, with the exception of the LATAM emerging countries, Argentina, Peru, Chile, and Ecuador, where we currently do not have allocated funds. These markets are listed here because if we have the right regional opportunity, we'd like to diversify our marketing approach. I will talk a little bit about something that we just launched that does address, kind of a presence in these markets at a higher level. And finally, this chart illustrates where we believe strategic opportunities for each individual market when it comes to increasing visitation, traveler spend, and brand awareness and perception. So I just want to highlight a few because obviously it would take the next 20 minutes to go through each one of these. But starting at the top, Australia, New Zealand, that's a growth region, so we want to capture more visitors in that market. When they leave, and when they leave the region, they typically travel for multiple weeks, providing an opportunity to visit multiple destinations within the US. However, from our research, we know that our brand perception in that market is lower than where we want it to be, so we have to work on improving that in order to achieve our visitation and spending goals. Jumping down a few to Colombia, their visitation exceeds pre-pandemic levels, and we receive the highest share of outbound international travel from that market, but they typically visit the same place. So our messaging and market should be focused on growing traveler dispersal. A little bit further down, jumping to Mexico, visitation from that market is critical to achieving our 2027 goals, as we talked about. So we need to keep focused on that, but they typically take shorter trips when they visit, mostly longer weekends. So we believe that there's an opportunity for us to increase spend per trip by targeting either a higher value traveler or getting them to increase their length of stay. And finally, second to the bottom for Southeast Asia, that's an emerging market with an expand objective. So this region has significantly increased their air connectivity to the USA, coming in at about 300 direct weekly flights from 8 different markets within the region. So there's an opportunity for us to increase visitation. But growing brand awareness of the USA is an important step in our ability to achieve that. We have been working with the team in the region on a project basis, but we currently have an RFP out now to enhance our presence in the region in the coming year. So I know that was a lot. The world is a very big place. There's a lot of different approaches that we take per country. So happy to entertain questions or.
I have a recommendation. So as I think about the way we think about e-commerce, right, we think about in our world, we think about visits, conversion, attach, so that people are not just buying one stuff. And then finally, it's repeat. It's not one and done. And I'm like super happy to see increase like visit frequency is a thing. But I think we will be well served if we actually call it out as a metric, which sits on your second objective. I just think that if it's front and center, we're just going to be more sharper and pointed around it. That's just a recommendation I have. So I'm happy that it is here. I would also include it in your marketing framework. You have the planning, booking, and so on. It probably is implicit, but it would be better served if we actually call out repeat as its own kind of pillar, because then we could do things that specifically allows people to come back over and over. That's my only, just a thought in the recommendation.
It's a good thought recommendation, and I'm sure there are certain markets that there's more opportunity than others, or there's a higher existing baseline of repeat visitation. So we would have to do a little thinking, I think, internally about exactly how that shows up, either in the consumer journey wheel or under objective 2, as you suggested.
If I may, a place for you to consider, coming from a destination that benefits from repeat destination. Typically Oregon is not a first-time destination for international visitors coming to the US. We benefit from repeat visitation to the US. So when you think about your metric around dispersal, that's a way for you to think about it. There may be many others. You've got a whole bunch of smart people on the team, so I'll let you go at it, but Hari is exactly right. I think that idea of kind of building brand loyalty is pretty powerful.
We have, there are some tracking limitations around repeat visitation because we can survey that, but we don't have access to how people come here, and like passport stamps and things like that. I'm just riffing here, but I think that we should track that independently as maybe a metric in which we, like an internal metric, and we can come back to that. I don't know. What I'm worried about is putting this in a formal plan without looking at specifically like the feasibility of having the right tracking mechanisms.
You should be able to use the location services, like we use that a lot in geofencing and things like that, that they can do. If anyone has location services on their phone, which I would wager to say 98% of people, if you use Uber, for instance, have them on.
Yeah.
That might be a way to engage some of those companies that do that.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I mean, for Canada and Mexico, it would be a little bit easier, right? For people who are coming from Asia or Australia, they're not gonna be coming here every year. So would we create kind of repeat visitation on a multi-year level, right? Like I'm trying, I appreciate the comment that you made, I'm just trying to like internalize it and.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is the forum where you need to come up with a solution. I think you can go back and think about, hey, is this an important enough metric we can bring up front and center?
Yeah.
Whether it is published here or you have it internally, but I just think our discussion would be sharper if you bring it, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great learning, I think, from your business model. And I think even if we get to the place of suggestive marketing, right? You like this, or you might like that. I think would be really interesting to explore as people go down the path. So yeah, it's great feedback.
Hari touched on this earlier today, but and maybe this is nestled under improved brand perception, but I think understanding the nuances around some of the ways that these folks travel or need or like look at some of these things is really important because it does feel though there's some significant barriers to some of these countries. The driving thing that you brought up, I think is one. And so really understanding what those may be related to these specific countries is important, whether it's its own category or underneath that.
Absolutely.
That was a question or comment I was gonna make or ask, I guess, is, and it's to Mexico specifically. You know, if you look at this, you want to increase the visit frequency, length of stay, that immediately went to me, how many of them are coming for BFR? How many of them are coming to visit their family that are here, are staying with them in their home, not in a hotel, and are really just not getting out beyond the family, right? I'm just curious, and I don't know enough about how far you got, as you said, the world's a big place, that's a lot of data to try to capture by country and everything. So that's the first question I had on Mexico specifically.
Yeah, also on BFR, I think it's a great point, Mike. Do we have the ability to increase their length of stay? So you're coming to see, you know, your aunt and uncle, would you extend and stay on and perhaps visit another destination? I think there's a lot to explore there. And we've talked internally with the team about a lifetime of travel. And so looking at these customers, once you acquire them, I'm sure that's how Expedia thinks about it. How do you continue to be their go-to destination for the future? So I think that feeds into the strategy of the team. These are great ideas.
Well, and so I just want to re-up something about the emerging markets and just how this looks optically. We have all of the continents basically that are inhabitable or that people actually live on, except for Africa. And of all the countries there, Nigeria, South Africa, places where there's frequent US travelers from, there's feasibility, there's companies, there's brands, not seen anywhere on here. Feasibility of travel to the United States, nothing from the Caribbean, which I understand those are much smaller countries by metric, but some not by economic. And Americans travel there, so the resource and actually retire there that cause visibility to say, well, I want to see where you're from. So I see that as a blind spot consistently.
So I would, go ahead.
I was just saying, I'm happy to start with that, Alan. It is a great observation and one that we've talked a little bit about internally since I've arrived. And it has been a measurement of market size in the past, to your point, but there are so many emerging opportunities. And whether we look at it from a VFR perspective and extending stays, I know in my experience in New York, certainly, you know, the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico in particular were huge markets for New York. As was Jamaica. And so extending stays was certainly a strategy there. And so thinking about the US as a leisure destination or a business destination as we begin to explore MICE, there are tremendous opportunities. And as someone said to me last night, follow the metal and looking where the airlines are investing. And certainly pre-pandemic, there was a lot of investment in Africa. And I think we will and are seeing that again already. So it is a point well taken.
I would just add that similarly to when I looked at the countries for the 3-year framework and talked about Argentina, Peru, Chile, and Ecuador. And what I will share in just a moment is about our Go USA TV platform. We have launched platforms in Africa to be able to start the process of educating potential travelers around the USA opportunity. Access is, to be honest, one of the biggest hurdles that we have for you know, just ease of getting to the United States compared to some of the other market opportunities. We take your comments and considerations incredibly seriously. It's something that does, as Fred mentioned, something that we do have lots of conversations about. And so thank you for raising it and for continuing to raise it.
Very good. Any other questions?
Just one question, and we could take this offline if needed to, from a research standpoint. I'm just curious, as we talk about, are you repeating your visit, but understanding intent to return, does that come out in our survey work? So in other words, how are they enjoying their experience once they come to the US? Because that's so important, positive word of mouth, when they go back to their country. How do we capture that information?
Stephanie, we tried to address it with what we called our Net Promoter Score, which is on the recommendation side. It is if we assume as a proxy that if when people are discussing their travel and you pick it up and say, oh, you should go to the United States, that is part of their experience. So that is how we, due to the limitation of certain metrics, that is probably the closest on the proxy side for us to measure that.
Yeah, I think the way that this survey works is that there's a scale from 1 to 5 in terms of like the likeliness of recommending your USA experience to friends and family, or something like if somebody were to ask you about your trip to the United States, what would you say? And there is a scale of options.
Okay,
It's ending it or even having positive comments about it. So
okay,
that is
thank you,
as a measurement.
thank you.
And I think we might have an opportunity to explore that more in partner marketing going forward with, because the first party data and the proprietization, I can't say that word, of the privacy concerns around direct customer contact. But I think that is a point well taken. Again, a measurement of popularity, destination, and perceptions, right? So as we think about that lifelong journey, intent to repeat is key. So well taken, Stephanie.
Thank
you. Any other questions? If not, we're gonna turn to Dawn for an overview of the financials. We're just gonna pass in the clicker. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, they're driving from the back.
Oh,
Okay,
driving
great.
in the back. Perfect.
New instructions. All right, good afternoon, good morning, good day, everyone, depending on where you are. So, to deliver on the plan that we just spent last hour talking about, we're proposing a $252 million budget. The details by department was part of your pre-read package. But from a high level, 93% of the proposed budget is going directly to our marketing efforts to bring international visitors into the United States. Only 7% is related to the overhead, so that's a good standard. And then the next question is, where's the financing coming from? Next slide, please. So as you see here, our proposal is our partners will finance $55 million of the budget. The travel promotion fund will be $100 million, sponsorships of $1 million, and reserve drawdown of about $96 million. So we'll be able to finance the budget, as I just said. There's a lot of activity going on, but we feel that $252 million will do it. Be happy to take any additional questions.
More a comment or a suggestion, born out of some of the conversation that we had yesterday, Don, and that's related to the budget generally. I guess for me, it's based on kind of two premises. Number one, I feel as a board member, I have tremendous insight into the budget, the expenses, the revenue of Brand USA. You know, you do all the heavy lifting. We have the details that we need, the compliance report, all of it that we would need. When I think about budgets at this level, my one concern is they can feel a little bit like lock boxes. You know, we agree that we're going to put this much money into this piece of this pie. And I think we're at an interesting point right now where we're experiencing a much fuller and more robust recovery from COVID globally. Granted, there are certainly challenges and headwinds, as have been duly noted, that still exist. And probably to some degree, there will always be those in different degrees. But we're in a really interesting time. And I know Fred, as our new CEO, is getting a bit of his listening tour and meeting with the industry. I know he had the opportunity to do that at DI and brought some very interesting insights to the board yesterday in our conversations. And it just seems to me that maybe stepping back a little bit from as much specificity as we have in the number of, I guess, let's say pieces of the pie might serve us well. In other words, it will afford us to have greater flexibility and nimbleness and responsiveness to market trends, changes in consumer behavior, things that we're hearing, for example, investments in AI and innovation. And, are we doing as much research as we want to do? And so anyway, my suggestion based on all that is to afford the staff, because I feel I have tremendous insight as a board member, but afford the staff. And I think it's an appropriate level for the board to fly at, as much nimbleness and flexibility as possible. And that means maybe look at those expense categories, those pie slices, and see if there might be some of those that can be aggregated together, because it'll just afford you, I think, as you move through the year, the opportunity to be that much more nimble and responsive, and to ensure that what we're putting before commerce, which is part of this, is as clear a direction as we're able to provide them at this time with what we know. So just a suggestion for me.
I appreciate that, and we appreciate the confidence in allowing us to have that flexibility, so thank you.
I think it goes without saying too, having a new leader in place that wants to change the strategic direction, there should be some room.
Got it.
Can I just make one comment about that? As I said to Fred, in the 357 rule, which is how many times you say something before they pick it up. Not because you can't pick it up, but with so much download and some particularly anxiety coming in, these are frameworks, and 80% of the plan that we're presenting today still once it's approved, has to be planned over the course of the next 12 months. So I think it puts you in a good spot to identify overall spend. And I appreciate your comment being bigger buckets, broader buckets, because it could change within it. You'll have the ability, along with the team and the board, to adjust it accordingly. But it is a framework, and he's coming in a great spot when he's looking to listen and learn, to then figure out, okay, what does that look like specifically over the next 12 months, and then tons of flexibility over the next 2 years.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chris, and thank you, Tom, for that suggestion, and the other colleagues on the board. It is, I think, a tremendous opportunity to look at opportunities as we listen to the industry. For example, at DI last week, we did hear a lot about the meetings and incentive, corporate events market, inbound internationally. I know the team already has laid some framework to explore that, but I think we may have more opportunities sooner than later to do more work in the MICE space. So that flexibility would be terrific, and we will obviously keep the board apprised as we move forward. Thank you for that opportunity.
So I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
All right, so the action before the board is approval of this plan, this business plan, so that it, with suggestions and comments and such that have been brought forward, and I'll have a staff take it into a consideration, and we'll take it into consideration before providing to the Secretary of Commerce by August 1st, so with that, I will ask, are there any other questions or comments from the board? By the way, just stepping back for a second, thank you. I love the engagement. I love the questions. I love the comments, and both the affirmations and the challenges. So board, thank you for doing your job, doing the pre-read, and then showing up here ready to engage with the staff. I very much appreciate it. So with that, I'll just ask if there are any remaining questions or comments that board members want to make before we consider a motion to adopt. Seeing none, I will therefore entertain a motion to approve the FY25 business plan and budget as has been provided to us with the recommendations and such that we brought forward. So moved. Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the plan and budget for FY25 are approved as provided.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on our agenda is the consideration of the board committee assignments. And this is another opportunity for me to say thank you to the board members. As I reached out to you, none of you said no. which I take as a great sign of your humility and willingness, not my ability to be a pitch man. So thank you for all of you being so willing to step into these various board roles. I believe a lot in board engagement, and this is a way for us to be able to do that. So getting active in this space is important to me. This is, again, information that has been provided to you in advance. You've had the opportunity to review it, and I would ask for a motion to approve the board committees as provided.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, hearing none, the committees are approved as presented. With that, thank you, Mr. CEO. I think I'm turning it back over to you for some updates on some programs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you again to the staff and thank you to the board for the confidence in the planning. We're very excited to dig in and begin the new year. With that, with the time remaining, we would like to provide the board with an update on the status of current year programming. I've been seeing KPI since we last met in March. And with that, we'll start with Don for a financial review.
Thank you. All right, so next slide, please. I'm pleased to provide the financial highlights for year to date through June 30th. We have some good news to share from a revenue perspective. We year to date is $101 million. Of particular interest is the $57 million that we got from 94 of our partners for cash contributions. So partners, thank you very much. In-kind contributions of $42 million and sponsorships of $1 million. Expenses, we're running a little bit behind on our budget, but we expect to be pretty much on target by the end of the year. Currently at $180 million. Our cash reserves are very strong. And then we are on track to meet our match requirements. Happy to answer any questions, but overall, we're doing really well.
Good. Next, we're going to go to Cassidy to Stacy and Cassidy for KPI updates and partnerships.
I think I'll be taking all of it
Very
today. So before I begin, I just want to, again, following Todd, thank you for your feedback. Thank you for the insights that you have bringing to us from your independent experience. It's really incredibly helpful. And although we only meet 3 times a year, I always find these the time that we have together really beneficial for the work that we do at Brand USA. The team at Brand USA has been doing a fantastic job delivering on our FY24 plans. And we wanted to carve out a section of time together to share some of the highlights. So just to this point, in an effort to streamline the presentation, I'm going to be presenting on behalf of the marketing leadership team today, and those who have joined us on screen. But before I do any of the presentation, I just want to share a huge shout out to the team. You are killing it. Over the past year plus that I've been at Brand USA, you have been pedal to the floor, rebuilding our marketing initiatives to be more robust, larger and more integrated than we've ever done before. So everything that I present from this point forward is only made possible by the team on the screen and those watching on Zoom. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to KPIs. We're about 3/4 into our fiscal year, and just a small note that the data that we receive comes in at different frequencies. So some are on a monthly basis, some are on a quarterly basis, and some are reported annually. I will share updates on where we are on each KPI with the latest data that we have available. So starting with objective 1. So as Aaron mentioned, all of these objectives are evergreen from last year. 1, to establish and maintain the USA as a preferred global travel destinations. Our strategies for this goal is to improve our brand perception and increase our intent to visit. We're tracking perception and travel intent on both the macro level and what we were able to influence. So this is different than what we are aiming to track for next year, which is why there are 2 different sets of metrics for this compared to what we talked about earlier. Overall, brand perception is higher this year over FY23's baseline. And while we're on track to achieve the brand perception target for those who have been exposed to our marketing, We look at our ad effectiveness, Mike, to the point that we were talking about before. We do studies and there's a 10 percentage point difference for those who are aware of our advertising versus those who are unaware of our advertising in terms of perception. When it comes to intent to visit, we're falling short of our target at that macro level. But for those who have been exposed to our marketing, we're pacing 26 percentage points ahead of those who are unexposed, and which is well above our target for the year. For objective 2, to contribute to community prosperity by driving international visits and spend. This is done by building a foundation for long-term growth for the US visitor economy, achieved by increasing visitation, spend, and dispersing travelers around the United States and growing our market presence. So KPIs for this one include inbound arrivals from our core markets. I just want to note that there's a reporting lag from Canada and Mexico, so core market visitation is only available through February, but data for our overseas markets is available through May. That said, we are currently at 17% visitation growth through February, putting us on track to achieve that KPI. And we are pacing above target for visitor spend at 18% fiscal year to date. It's worth noting that the visitor spending in May reached $21.6 billion, which is the highest monthly spend that has ever been recorded even during pre-pandemic era. We are also well on our way to include over 180 non-gateway destinations within our marketing efforts, where 86% of our partner program participants feature non-gateway visitations. I'm sorry, destinations, not gateway destinations. We are also investing in markets where we believe that there's opportunity to grow. So this past year, we added consumer media in markets where we have typically had trade and PR efforts in the past. And right now we're pacing at just slightly over 4% of the media budget to have invested in those markets. Looking at objective 3, to lead and engage stakeholders of the US travel industry. This is achieved by growing our partnerships, maintaining partner contributions, and promoting a diversity of US stakeholders. Our partner participation KPIs are on track or have already been achieved. So the first 3 metrics, satisfaction, active partnerships, and maintaining partners, we are exceeding our targets. We are within 1.5 million of our goals to collect 50 million in contributions for this year. This number is just a little off, I think, from a timing perspective and what maybe we have put on the slide. Just want to, for those on the line who contribute to Brand USA, I just want to say thank you very much to our partners who continue to support us in our international marketing efforts. Like, this is only possible because of your investment with us. And this year, just want to flag back what Aaron said about our objective 3 and the diversity index that we're creating. This year, we began tracking inclusion in our marketing efforts for small businesses, minority-owned, female-owned, LGBTQ. And we've been working with our partners to help us measure representation of the historically underrepresented. And we've tracked over 200 plus inclusions directly tied to our efforts. As indicated by our objectives and our targets for FY25, we see this metric as a starting point to evolve this measurement framework into that diversity index. So I will pass the next slide to Don for our KPI updates on the final objective.
Okay. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. No, I'm sorry, go back one, sorry. There's a delay. All right, so with the Evolve Brand USA for the future and growth, culture and team, there's 3 strategies there. The first one has to do with 100% compliance. It's ongoing. We're there. Clean audit has been completed this year, so we're there. But I wanted to spend a little bit more time talking about the DEI strategy. So we'll go to the next slide. So our DEI strategic plan consists of 4 areas, 4 goals. When we went into the DEI initiative, we wanted to accomplish some big things. So our plan really is a part of our entire organization. In fact, 34% of our employees have volunteered to be a part of the DEI committee. And I'm proud to say, including our CEO, so thank you, Fred. Just looking briefly at each of the goals, overall, we're on track for all of them. Goal 1 is our commitment to creating a culture of shared values around being welcoming and inclusive. So in year 1, we conducted coaching, training, team building so far as a baseline for of trust and healthy interactions, even when we disagree. And as part of this particular goal 1, we have revamped our performance management system. Goal 2 is more internal facing. We've hosted a series of events and educational opportunities to learn more about our cultures that we embody. Goal 3 is external facing, and Stacy just talked about that. It's just a few minutes ago where we are on that particular goal. And goal 4 is devoted to creating economic opportunity for underrepresented vendors in the travel industry. And so we're doing 2 things there. We're trying to establish a vendor diversity framework and also working on incorporating principles of DEI in our procurement policies. So we're on track. It's a big goal, and that's what we are.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay. So, about a year ago, we introduced a new platform for our partners, called the Partner Success Portal. You can move to the next slide, which is a centralized resource for our partners to assess their program performance. Our goal for this platform is to provide our partners with the best tools to demonstrate the value of their partnership with Brand USA. We engaged our stakeholders throughout the development timeline. These are just kind of the high points, many of which are not included on the timeline. But we are really thrilled to share that phase 1 just launched on July 15th. Phase 1 provides dynamic data visualization of their program results. Want to shout out to the partnership team and a big thank you to all of the partners who provided their valuable time in the development process and their feedback. We are going to continue to add to the platform to make it a one-stop place for all of our partners. Shifting gears to a few consumer marketing updates. In May, since we last met, we launched our consumer campaign, Experience It All in China. This is our first, you can switch to the next slide. This is our first major campaign in the market since before the pandemic. For those new members of the board or less familiar, our Experience It All campaign is our marquee campaign that invites travelers to envision and immerse themselves in the diverse experiences that can be found in the United States. It emphasizes that a US vacation isn't just about the places that you go, it's about the feelings that you have while you're here. The campaign will run during peak travel months for Chinese travelers and will be ending this month and is running on various trip planning and social media and OTA platforms that you see on the screen. Moving to social, we are shifting away from our lights on pandemic approach and have launched an always on social strategy, expanding our presence on Chinese social platforms. So we're now active on Red, Douyin, and WeChat. With WeChat, it's a video channel and a mini program, which allows consumers to connect directly with booking partners. By embedding that mini program within WeChat, we have been able to seamlessly integrate that booking service into users' daily routines and minimizing the friction of the booking process. The mini program serves as a content hub and a trusted information center for our Chinese audience. We also have a new presence on 2 new platforms. So Red, which is very similar to both Pinterest and Instagram, and Douyin, which is the Chinese Chinese version of TikTok. So these 2 social media channels have become key platforms to reach the Chinese traveler. And through this expanded China social strategy, our goal is to become the trusted voice in the market for all potential travelers who are curious about visiting the United States. Additionally, we partnered with Red for a content partnership that taps into their network of content creators or KOLs. The partnership includes content from a celebrity influencer in China, 8 additional creators and a USA exclusive microsite, and a UGC engagement campaign and paid media that drives back to that microsite. So for this effort, we're working with a Chinese mega celebrity influencer, Kiki, as you can see on the screen. She has a huge audience across her social channels. She is all about posting very charming videos that highlight her travels around the world, and and she recently hosted one of China's most watched television events of the year in April. There was a lot of excitement around that when we were in China. And results to date are exceeding her usual benchmarks, and sentiment has been overwhelmingly positive and really inspirational. For Copa America that just wrapped up, we can move to the next slide. We wanted to share a social initiative that we tied to that event. So our goal with this effort was to leverage Copa America as a key cultural moment to increase soccer or football fan familiarity with US experiences and destinations that have been hosting the games. So it's an opportunity for us to encourage them to have extended their stay and increase their travel zones beyond those cities. We see this as a really great opportunity to begin setting the foundation and building FOMO for both the the FIFA Club Games next year and then the World Cup in 2026. So for this, we took a phased approach and varied our messaging. So before, during, and after the games. So before the game started, we wanted to inspire our audience with content that merges both a passion for travel and for football in order to demonstrate what a trip to the USA for Copa could be like. With this content, we showcased a host city's hat trick, which is a soccer term, which is basically was 3 fantastic, unexpected things to do in and around the destination. So I just want to share what that looked like. No audio. Just like watching your phone when you don't have the audio on. In that experience.
Working rehearsal. Yes, right.
That's good. And during the game, we partnered with 2 content creators who have a lot of passion for the sport to share their own individual point of views on the trip for the USA during a soccer match. So let's look at that one. This one, it was filmed in Atlanta, and it shows kind of all of the different kinds of experiences that they had both in the Atlanta and then as you see outside Atlanta and at the game. Okay. And then the post is still ongoing, but we wanted to share an instant replay, building onto the sports theme and recap those creators' experiences who attended Copa. So let's take a look at that. So our campaign is ongoing now, but we have seen strong performance, which is well over benchmarks. Can you flip to the next slide, please? Thank you. And our completion rates for ads are great. The creative is incredibly cost efficient, so that's allowing us to maximize our reach and impact across the board. We're seeing, just to go back 1 second, we're seeing an 80% performance for video click-throughs, video completion rates. And that is 22% higher than our benchmarks and also platform benchmarks. So we're really thrilled with that. So just continuing on the sports theme, we have another social effort that's launching this week around the global moment of the Olympics. We want to maximize the attention that the world will have on the Olympics over the next few weeks. And there's been a lot of buzz this year around the TikTokification of the Olympics. Next slide, please. So for advertisers, it's no longer just enough to have pretty ads running during the broadcast of the games. We should be thinking about it as an entire ecosystem with social at the core of that ecosystem. So just to note that we will have ads running across Europe through our partnership with Warner Brothers Discovery through the Olympic Games. But we've also planned a very strategic social effort to have a relevant presence during these 2 weeks. So although the games are in Paris, we plan to share USA-centric messages on social, taking advantage of the collective conversation with social content that will tie into the Paris Games. So breakdancing, skateboarding, surfing, and sport climbing are all relatively new sports to the Olympics. And these sports are based on freestyle expression that aligns perfectly with our brand positioning. They're also very culturally associated with the United States, which creates a very natural tie-in for us. So we already have a very good balance of content that's planned, but we've set up also a social war room to be in the best position to jump on in the moment conversations and trends. We see this content as the beginning to build a bridge to the future. So tying into the Olympics in LA in 4 years, and hot off the press from this morning, the announced Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City for 2034. So congratulations to Salt Lake City on achieving that. And yes, and the USA, right?
USA.
Yeah, yeah. Moving on to a content marketing update. This is what I was alluding to earlier. Next slide, please. Giving the expansive potential to increase visitation from the Latin America region, we just launched a Spanish language channel for Go USA TV. So LATAM consumers have strong streaming behaviors and are purchasing more smart TVs with fast channel technology. Earlier when I mentioned that our resources to invest in consumer marketing across the region are limited, our Go USA TV in Espanol provides an influential platform to reach and influence those travelers. We have research indicating that Go USA TV viewers are 2 times more likely to travel to the United States, so that works to our favor. The platform right now has a potential reach of 42 million households, and this allows us to test in-language programming to determine if dubbed content increases the viewing habits compared to just the English language version. In the launch month, we saw 4.5 million minutes watched, which accounts for 20% of our total minutes watched globally for the month of May. Launching soon in July, so I guess July or later in the month, or early August at this point, will be channels in Argentina, Chile, Peru, and in Spain. And finally, just a few updates from our global trade efforts. Our online travel trade education platform, the USA Discovery program, has gone through an overhaul and relaunched this summer in almost all of our target markets. So this revamped platform underwent significant updates, adding video content, more attractive imagery. It integrates our Road Trip USA itineraries into the platform. It is available in 8 languages with around 30,000 active users worldwide on the platform. And we're going to give agents with this platform, we'll give them confidence to sell and promote the United States. We're going to be working with Amadeus on a 12-month promotional campaign for this. For those of you unfamiliar with Amadeus, Amadeus captures all 3 major GDS systems, which travel agents worldwide use to book tickets and flights. And so we'll be targeting agents in our target markets and in visa waiver countries. This year, we have coordinated sales missions in 8 markets, including an inaugural Canada Connect, which took place last month in Toronto, Montreal, and Calgary. This event brought 37 US partners to market for the first time in our top international market. We connected US partners with buyers and trade media and travel agents consortia groups. Just this month, I don't know, like a week ago, basically. We ran our final 2 missions for the year, in Japan and in South Korea. This year, we extended our time in both markets, running week-long missions, with stops in Osaka, Tokyo, Seoul, and Busan. For these 2 missions, we were able to leverage our public-private partnership to conduct an exciting new add-on to our Japan and Korea missions over the past 2 weeks. So, Erin, do you want to chat a little bit about
Yeah.
that?
Thanks, Stacy. So one of the really exciting and unique things that Brand USA can do as the national DMO in a public-private partnership. So as Stacy alluded to, as part of our mission last week in Korea, 2 weeks ago in Japan, we brought a team from headquarters at U.S. Customs and Border Protection with us to conduct mobile enrollment in the Global Entry Program in those markets. We're also accompanied, I should say, by the leadership from the National Travel and Tourism Office at Commerce. And just for context, there's about 13 countries out there in the world whose citizens are eligible for global entry, which of course give us expedited screening at U.S. ports of entry, as well as TSA PreCheck benefits. So as part of the 2024 U.S.-Japan tourism year, CBP actually, and their counterpart in the Japanese government actually launched global entry this year in Japan. It's currently a pilot program, and the launch of that program was on our sales mission 2 weeks ago. So it'll be hopefully converting to a full-blown program by the end of the calendar year. But again, a great way to help jumpstart the Japanese market, which of course is so critical to our overall visitation and to so many of our West Coast destinations. And while Korean travelers have been technically eligible for global entry for about 10 years, there's only about 5,000 or so enrolled in the program. And so this was a way as well to get a little bit of visibility and enroll some folks in Korea. So in total, CBP enrolled about 800 people in those 2 markets, which of course is great. It takes them out of the line, it gets them expedited processing, but it was a really great way to send a welcoming message to those markets. That these are folks that are invited to America and have a special access through the customs line. And of course, you know, one of the things that we're tasked with at Brand USA is communicating and promoting U.S. Travel policies, visa and entry policies. And so in addition to sending a good message to the market, it was a great way to help communicate those entry policies. So a lot of appreciation, you know, working with the embassies there, with CBP, with the American Chambers of Commerce to recruit executives, and something that perhaps we can add on to some future missions in some of those other global entry markets. So thanks for the platform to the trade team, and thank you, Stacy, for that time.
Thanks for giving me a break. Rounding out this year, we will be hosting the UK Ireland MegaFam at the end of September in partnership with British Airways, American Airlines, and Aer Lingus. Aer Lingus provides the first time where Irish agents can fly directly to and from Dublin to attend the MegaFam. The MegaFam is going to visit 12 states and in 20 cities with a finale in Chicago. So that is last year's or this fiscal year's mission. Looking at next fiscal year, we have pretty much finalized our mission schedule for next fiscal year. We're planning for about 7 missions. We're going to be organizing missions in Mexico and India, Australia, South America, and Canada. And we are evaluating our plans for Japan and South Korea based on feedback from the recent missions that occurred just a couple of weeks ago. New for 2025 will be an inaugural South Korea MegaFam, where we're partnering with Delta Airlines and Korean Air for finale in Seattle. A Latin America MegaFam in April with United, and Germany, Switzerland, and Austria regional MegaFam that's occurring in late September with United, Lufthansa, and Air Canada. Finally, we're planning a series of events across 8 European cities and Australia, promoting road trips across the United States in celebration of the upcoming 100th anniversary of Route 66 in 2026. These road shows will showcase iconic U.S. trips across all states and regions and bring to life diversity, fun, and unique experiences about hitting the road in the United States, in which we are going to, again, increase confidence for travel agents and tour operators to be able to educate their clients about those experiences. So that said, I think that's the end of all of the things that I have to share today. I just, again, want to say thank you to the amazing team at Brand USA for all that you do. You should be really proud.
Thank you, Stacy. And just a couple more things, and I'll continue to speak at 1.5x in the interest of time. Wanted to give an update on a couple of big industry platforms since the last board meeting, and then one preview for a coming one. So this is a little montage slide here that you can see. These are some of the marquee industry platforms, as I just said, that at which Brand USA really shows up in a major way to engage our world of stakeholders and obviously to create value for our partners. So moving in chronological order here, many of us in the room and on the call were together in Los Angeles at the beginning of May for IPW, which is the major inbound international trade show, travel trade show for the United States. You can see a great view of the team in the upper left there. This is our biggest stage, brightest lights of the year, where we come together with our world of stakeholders, meeting with our thousands of US supplier partners and many thousands of qualified buyers and media from all over the world. We engage with our federal partners here as well. And it's a time of year where we also tend to bring forward some of our announcements, in this case, announcing our new CEO, Mr. Dixon. You know, we did several hundred meetings and got a lot of positive coverage as well. We alluded to this a little bit earlier, but IMEX Frankfurt is the major business MICE meetings, incentive and conventions trade show taking place in Germany in May. This is the second year that we've created the USA Pavilion, which actually looks a lot like our pavilion at IPW. And we allowed, I think, nearing 24 exhibitor partners from the United States to come and try to attract those big meetings and events, which are such an economic driver to their communities. This is kind of our initial toe in the water on the meetings and event space. And as Fred alluded to, certainly a general area that we'll continue to explore. But I think we've heard tremendous feedback from the partners about their presence at IMEX. Then finally, we've talked about this a little bit. The US-China Tourism Leadership Summit is a marquee event on the calendar where we bring together leadership from the government and travel industry from the United States and China, a major way to keep the USA at the top of the list for the Chinese trade that are selling outbound travel, and certainly a major way to help jumpstart what ultimately is the top source of outbound travelers in the world, and in pre-pandemic times, and by far the number 1 source of spending in the United States. And so this was the first foray back into that market. And we had a record delegation of over 75 US leaders and really high level representation from the Chinese side. We were fortunate to be joined by several of our board members there, and I would create an opportunity here if any of the board members wanted to share anything about their experience in China that they might want to share with the group. Or we will keep the agenda moving here. So on the next slide, I just want to give a preview for the upcoming Brand USA Travel Week UK and Europe. And as many folks know, this has become the main vehicle that Brand USA has to connect our travel industry with the top producing tour operators and media across the continent. This year we'll be back at County Hall in London, as you can see on the slide, October 21 and 24. This program has really become a really well-developed event with 3 different tracks, one with about 125 or 130 exhibitors doing B2B, pre-scheduled B2B appointments with the key decision makers at the most important tour operators across Europe. There's another track with the top European media in order to get the stories out there from a PR perspective. And then we have a CEO track where this year we'll be joined by more than 75 industry CEOs, which will also be taking part in some of the media, but doing some dedicated enrichment about the European market. So it's really a great program. We are well oversubscribed and have a wait list on all 3 tracks. And something that we really appreciate everybody's feedback about and want to continue to keep that value proposition going. This is an extremely effective and cost-efficient way to access the most important stakeholders in Europe. So just wanted to give a preview for that. And that is the end of our current year report. So happy to entertain any questions or other sharings that anybody would like to do, but otherwise I'll turn it back to Fred and Todd.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aaron. And thank you to the team for the incredible work that they continue to do. And again, thank you to Chris for all of his stewardship and for the smooth transition. It's a tremendous amount of activity happening as you are hearing across the organization. But that does conclude our staff report. I do appreciate, and I know the staff appreciates the input and feedback on the FY 25 business plan and flexibility to work within the budget as a framework. We will take all of your feedback in and back with the team, and we will accordingly update the plans before we deliver them on time to the Department of Commerce. I do want to thank my colleagues at Brand USA for their leadership in thoughtful planning in this framework as presented for FY 25. I do want to take a second to thank Don, not only for his financial leadership, but for his leadership of our internal DE&I. Thank you for that important endeavor and work that you're leading. The team is intently focused on finishing out the remaining 2 months of the current fiscal and are on pace to end strong. As you have heard, what a great capstone for you, Chris. Tremendous benchmarks across the board in both revenue and programmatic objectives. I am confident in the framework that we presented today and look forward to working with you, the board, and the industry to continue enhancing Brand USA's impact and elevating the United States as the world's top destination with the top repeat visitation as well. As I've said, listening is going to be key to the next 3 to 4 months for me. So please keep the input coming. There will only be more opportunities for engagement and feedback as we go forward. So I am all ears and open doors. As you've seen in the framework and the path presented to you today, the next 3 years represent an incredible opportunity for this organization, for our industry, to enhance the aspirational appeal of the United States, to grow visitation, stimulate spending, and elevate Brand USA even further as the world's preeminent national tourism organization. We are going to do great things together. And I thank you again to the board for your service and to everyone for your support. With that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes our report. I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thank you, Fred. I understand we do have a few questions that are in the queue, and although I know we're bumping up against our scheduled time, if we are all in agreement, I'd love to still be able to entertain those questions and ask if we go ahead and bring those forward at this time, Aaron, if you could, for us, please.
That's great. Yeah, we do have a couple that have come through, and I'll start directing this one primarily to Stacy, although potentially to Fred as well. And this is the question about what are the different market segments that Brand USA will focus on in the coming years?
That's great. We just actually completed a market segmentation study. So we're digging into that now. Typically, what we've targeted in the past has been families, culture questers, luxury travelers, outdoor enthusiasts, and oh my God, why am I blanking on the last one? There's one more. I said luxury. Susan? Is it culinary? No.
It's excitement seekers.
Excitement seekers, yes, thank you. Clearly, I'm not one of them because I think all of them. So we're jumping out of airplanes. So that our Experience It All campaign has been independently targeting all of those travel segments, but as part of a major research effort that we did this past year, we just actually completed a segmentation study. So we will be deploying those in the coming fiscal year, but I don't have those fully mapped out yet. Thanks for the question.
Another question we have in the queue is, which countries do we regard as our competitive set, and how is that determined?
I think it really depends on where, I mean, we can answer this together, but I think it really depends on where the visitors are coming from. So, from a European perspective, I would suggest that European countries are a competitive set because Europeans tend to travel more, more regionally. But when you look at countries like more in Latin America, I think you can think about Europe as a competitor. You can think about maybe more longer haul destinations. I think there's also a bunch of countries that are emerging. And I think we have to keep a very close eye on those because they have increased in popularity due to social media. They become a lot more accessible for travelers. They're cost effective and many countries are spending a lot of money advertising to travelers. So hopefully that answers that question.
And then there are just a couple more, so I'll keep them coming. I know we're at time, but this one it's actually a question from India, but I think it's a broader question, which is what are some of the things that can be done both to bring people back regularly to the USA, but also to increased nights stayed and money spent in the USA?
Well, we had a really amazing India sales mission in January. So I think that was fantastic in the sense of I think it was the largest delegation that we had brought to India in our history. We also added an inaugural media track to that mission. So being able to start to tell different and bigger stories about USA experiences. So I would say that is one thing to do, is just start to get the message out there. What was really interesting for me, what I learned while we were in India is that, and this goes back to the VFR conversation that we had earlier, that typically India had been seen for the US as a VFR market. That is shifting, where India travelers are a lot more exploratory about wanting to do more in the US, and they may go and they may visit someone, but they really do want to now go to other places. I think they're exploring a lot more around the United States. So I think it's about, consistency of marketing and messaging. It's about telling the different experiences that we can have here and improving to them that there is an opportunity to get more out of their experience, so they should extend their stay.
Very good. So there are a couple more, but I want to maybe wrap up with this one here, which is this topic of over tourism, which the question comes from Europe, and noting that there are a lot of issues in Europe. Is that a risk in the United States, and is that something that Brand USA can play a role in dispersal and diffusion of travelers in the United States?
Sure, I'm happy to take that one. And it is something that I think all of us in the destinations marketing space take very seriously. But we have tremendous opportunity, I think, to move travelers about through both space and time. Seasonality is something that we have begun to explore. It's come up in the listening sessions recently. And shifting travelers' demand into shoulder seasons, I think, is a real opportunity. But it is something that we're mindful of, certainly as it relates to our natural resources rather, and to obviously our cities and community responsibilities to communities. So it is something that we're mindful of, and I think we're fortunate not to see the level of activity that we're seeing in other countries, but we are mindful and are working to prevent that now.
Well, that's great. So appreciate everybody's comments from the line, and please keep tuning into our board meetings. I'll turn it back to you guys.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate you doing that. I appreciate the questions. My closing remarks are really very, very succinct, and it's thank you. I'm just so grateful to those of you that tuned in. I hope you find these meetings both informative and inspiring, that you're taking information away, but you're also leaving with a sense of hope and aspiration and the ability that we can do even more to help grow and sustain this industry that we all dearly love. To the board, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your participation in our meeting today. And especially as I just want to emphasize that word participation. I mentioned it earlier, I know, but to, the staff providing us the pre-reads, you obviously did your homework. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for coming prepared to engage with the board and making this a highly engaging and productive meeting especially as we dove into the business plan for next year. To the staff, thank you for all the work that you do to prepare for these meetings and all the work you do every day to help serve the millions of Americans that work every day in our industry. What you do matters to them. That's the thing I always think about is what I do, every day. Does it matter in the lives of others? And, this ability to create jobs and economic vitality in communities is at the heart of why I do what I do, because I believe in the power of the travel and tourism industry, and I believe you guys do too, and it shows up in your work. So thank you for that. Fred, welcome. As we wrap up this meeting, welcome. We're all done. The baptism by fire is over now, and but welcome. It's great. It is exciting to have you in this role, and I look forward to the days and years ahead that we're going to have.
Likewise.
And Chris, thank you. Thank you for your years of service to the industry, to Brand USA. Thank you for your years of friendship to me personally. I look forward to being able to celebrate you in November as you get inducted into the Hall of Leaders. And with that, my friends, we are adjourned. Thank you.